Hi everyone, my name is Eric Arahi. I'm going to be conducting this webinar. Today's webinar is about satellite databases. We received a lot of questions about satellite databases and we decided to do a webinar on this topic. There's quite a bit of things to be talking about. So a lot of questions don't know why it's used, how to use it properly, and what you can, what you can't do, and so on. So we're going to demystify this today. But first of all, like, why would you use a satellite database? The reason, well, there could be several reasons. Most of the time, what happens is people working remotely out of a server, so they don't have access to a connection or anything. So they would create those satellite databases to be able to work offline, and then they would bring them back later on and synchronize it to a master database. So that's usually what happens. But there's other reason why you would like to do this. Instead of having several copies of your database and having different people working on it, and then you may end up with drill holes that are in several databases at the same time, and then you don't know which one is the most recent one and which one has been modified and so on, and then if there's risk of losing data. The satellite database that we offer here only allows one drill hole to be in modification mode in one database at a time. So you avoid all of these problems and then you keep the integrity of your data and you're sure you're not losing any data. It could be also used, for example, if you have a consultant, a contractor, or an investor that wants to look at your data for some reason. You may not want to give them the whole database and so on. So you may just limit what you can give to that person. You can put it in read-only mode if you want to, and give that to that person so they can work with your data. Okay, so there's different reasons why you would like to do that, but anyway, so it's available in Geotic. It's not so difficult to use, and it's very handy actually. So by default, Geotic doesn't allow to have satellite databases, so you have to go and change some settings to be able to do it. So I'll show you how to do this right away. So normally you would have to go into the library. At the end here, you have type of security. So this is what you need to change to be able to do satellite databases. So once you click here, you will see there's basic, satellite, and network. By default, it's always at basic. But if you want to have satellite databases, you will have to use satellite or satellite and network. The difference between the two here is satellite is just allowing you to have satellite databases, while satellite and network, it also prohibit people to share one drill hole, like to be able to describe the same drill hole at the same time. So basically, if one person is logging a drill hole right now, well, this drill hole is locked to that user for the moment, and no one else can enter this drill hole at the same time. So that's satellite and network here. So that's the network part of it. Okay. But for our purpose here, we can just put it as satellite. And then once you do this, and by the way, before version 8.0.11, you had to choose between SQL or Access database, and all of your satellite databases needed to be in the same format. Since version 8.0.11, you can have different satellite databases that are in different formats. So you can have a few satellite databases in SQL and a few in Access. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is a novelty for this version. Okay, so all right. So if we go to the project tab here, you will notice that now you have two more columns that appeared that were not there before. So there's one that is called lock and one that is user. And then you have this button at the top that says synchro satellite. So basically every time you will have a drill hole that is synchronized in the satellite database, it will be locked in the master database and it will tell you which user did this and in which database it is right now. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, so to start with, you have to create a satellite database. Okay, an empty satellite database in which you will transfer some drill holes or outcrops or channels, whatever, into that satellite database. Okay, so to create a new satellite database, there's two different places where you can do that. It can be in the project tab here, where you click on Synchro Satellite in here, and then you can press New, and then it will ask you if this particular satellite database is Access or if it's SQL. And then you have to select the path and then the name of the satellite database. Okay? The second way of doing this is by going to the utility in here, and then you have a section here, synchronization and locks, where you can go into Synchro Satellite here, and then you can press New, and then you have the exact same window. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which one you're using. Okay, so I'm going to create one in Access right now. So see the Geotic DemoMine 800 of satellite. So that's good. I'm going to do finish. So basically what I just did is I created a satellite database. To be able to add some data into or some survey into your satellite database, again, there's two different ways of doing this, and these are a little bit different from one to the other. So if we go from here, okay, so I'm now in the utilities, Synchro Satellite, I can add some drill hole in here, or what I need. Okay, so you'll see the windows in here just gives you all the different drill holes that I have in my master database for each of my projects. So I can go in here and select the one I want to transfer. For example, if I want this one, 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 and this one, and then I don't know. I'm just going to put some in read-only mode so I can show you later on what it does. Okay. So what's important here is you have two different columns here. You have modification and read. So what it means is these ones are going to be in modification mode in my satellite database. These ones are going to be transferred, but they're going to be in read-only mode. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that a drill hole can only be editable in one database at a time, which means all of these drill holes, if they are now in my satellite database, they will become read-only into the master database. And these ones that are going to be transferred in read-only mode in the satellite database, they will remain in modification mode in the master database. Okay. So you select all the drill holes that you need, and then you can select which users are going to be using this satellite database. So you can select the different groups, the different users, and then you press finish. Okay, so by doing this, you're transferring everything that is related to those drill holes. So the photos, the certificates, all the information about those drill holes are also transferred into the satellite database. So that's what it's doing right now. Okay, so we can do this here. All right, so now we have a satellite database that does contain some information into it. So if I'm going back to project in here, and I'm going to the right project here, okay, these drill holes have been transferred into the satellite database. So you can see that there's a log and it says which user did this. Okay, so now if I was trying to modify one of these drill holes, so for example, if I'm going to FORX010001, and I was trying to go and modify this in the master database, I would not be able to do so. Okay, so it says unable to because it's already locked by blah, blah, blah. So I cannot modify this drill hole in particular, and there's a little lock here that says that it's in the satellite database, so that's why it's only read-only mode in this case. There's another way of transferring those surveys and drill holes directly from the project tab. Okay, so for example, this one has not been transferred. I didn't select it when I did do this, but I did it earlier. So the other way of doing it is you can select the different drill holes that you want or different survey that you want to transfer. In this case, okay, let's take those channels. Okay, so let's say I need this one and this one into my satellite database as well. So I can select the one I want and I press Synchro Satellite. I select the satellite database and I press OK. So again, I have a similar window as before where it says modification, read. So what do I want to do with these ones? So I'm going to be in modification mode in this case. Okay. You may ask, what is this little button here, ignore synchronization validation? So this is, you will only see it if you are the super administrator. Otherwise, you would not see this button. It's not going to be available. And this is used if you have any problems for any reasons, I don't know, your satellite database has been corrupted or things like this, and you still need to synchronize, then you will ignore some validation by doing this, okay? And it's not recommended to use it, and it's not used in a regular basis, but it does exist in case something happens, okay? So it will sync even though there was a problem either with the master or the satellite database here. Okay. So this is what it is. Again, I'm just going to say this. Yes. Okay. So I'm transferring all of these data. Okay, so close. I added those two channels in here in my satellite database. Okay, so once you have this, so I selected I browse for a place to put my database. I can copy this database somewhere else. Okay, there's different rules here, and I want to cover a little bit of this because it's quite important. But you can put it on a USB key, you can copy it on a computer, you can send it by email or whatever. Okay, so people can make copies of this satellite database. But the important rule to remember is that if you have several copies of the satellite database, only the first one that is synced to the master afterwards will be synced. All the other copies, if you try to sync them, it's not going to work. Okay? It's going to give you an error. It's never going to sync back. So only one of the copy will be synced back. So this is really important because if you make several copies, I suggest you always delete the previous one. So you don't want to end up having several copies of a satellite database and be working in two different satellite databases and then try to sync one, and then you try to sync the second one will bounce back and it's not going to be synced. So you will lose this data. Okay, so it's really, really, really important that you only keep one copy of the database. The satellite database. Okay, so these are just little schematics, things that people would do. Okay, so this is the ideal situation. You have a master in one satellite database, so you do the satellite and then you just sync it back. But if you have a master database, you do a satellite database, and you make a copy of the satellite database, and then this copy is synced to the master database, then the original copy is not going to be able to sync to the master database. Okay. Similar situation here. If you have a master database, you have a satellite database, and you make a copy, but the original one is the first one to be synced with the master, then the copy will never be synced with the master. Or you can get into a very messy situation where you make a copy and then a second copy, a third copy, and then you make a copy of a copy and then another copy and so on. The important thing here is the first one of these copy that is synced with the master is going to be the only one that will be synced. The other ones are all going to fail. Hence the red arrow here. Okay, so in this case, and this was just an example, but copy 3 here was synced. So the original one, the copy 1, copy 2, and copy 4 cannot be synced to the master. Okay, so only copy 3 in this case would be synced. Okay, so this is just a general rule of thumb. There's only one satellite database that goes with the master. And the reason behind this is also because you don't want to have different copies. So this forces people to make cleanups of copies. Okay, so if you have a copy, you send it by email, well, delete the original one. The person will have the copy on its side, and then it's going to work on it, and so on. Okay. Also, it's important to know that between the master and the satellite database, there's a link. Okay, so in the database, there's a line somewhere that links the two together. Okay, so they can recognize each other. So and this link is kept when you do your copies, but the minute you sync it, it resets this link. So that's why the other ones cannot be synced back. Okay. So this is really, really important. So I wanted to make that clear with all of you here. Okay. All right. So if we go back to our satellite database, okay. So this is the master database. I'm gonna go here, and if you notice, it added a satellite database. I can remove this one. It doesn't exist yet. So it created a satellite database in my database manager, which I can activate. Okay. So again, this could be on a different computer somewhere else. It could be located on a USB key or whatever. Okay. So your satellite database can be offline somewhere else. It doesn't really matter. Also, while it's loading, it's possible to have several users. This is just because I had some problem with my coordinate system, but that's not a big issue here. But you can have several people logging into the same satellite database at the same time. Okay, so this is useful, for example, if you're a big company and then you want to keep your master database in the office somewhere, but you have a project which has a local server and a local network server where people can log on that server. So you can put a satellite database and people can log on the same satellite database at the same time into that office, and then once in a while just sync it back to the master in the other office. Okay, so it's possible to do that. All right, so now that we're logged into this satellite database, so you will see that you can only see the data that has been transferred. So all the data was on this project, I think, that I transferred. So you will see this. Okay, so this one, I made it on purpose as a read-only. So you will see it in the log here that it's only read-only. So there's no problem in here. So from now on, it's the same thing as a normal database, except for a few exceptions here. So you will be logging, you will be editing different data in here. But there's a few things that are not available in a satellite database. Okay, so for example, if you go to the libraries, basically everything in the library are in read-only here, and you cannot modify anything. So I cannot modify the lithology codes, for example. I cannot modify the coordinate systems. I cannot modify the color codes. So everything is in read-only, so you can have access and see what they mean, but you cannot do anything with this. Another thing that is unavailable in a satellite database is the import-export from a geotic log database to another geotic log database. So this is unavailable. And everything that has to do with user rights is also unavailable. You cannot modify any of these in a satellite database. Okay, so, but apart from that, everything is exactly like like it should be in a normal database. So again, this is another thing here, the personalized tables. You cannot create new tables because it's not going to be able to sync later on with the master database. So new tables, new columns, like the format needs to be set up in the master database before syncing. Otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. Okay, so you can go ahead and you can describe your core. For example, if I was going to go in this one, I could just go add some lithology. Already some lithology, but in edit mode, I can just add a few things in here. So let's say I'm going from 80. Well, let's say 0 to 10 is actually overburden. I can add this. So you can just modify your drill holes in here automatically. But another thing that you could do, and it's possible to do in a satellite database, is you can create new drill holes or a new survey in the satellite database. And when you synchronize it back to the master later on, it will just add them to the master database. The same thing with project. You cannot edit projects, but you can add different elements to the different projects. Okay, so if I was going to do it, I can create a new drill hole. For example, I'm just going to call it webinar 1.01 and save. You'll see it will sync it back to the master database afterwards. Okay. So you just do your normal description, and then you work, and it's not different of any other geotic database. It's exactly the same thing afterwards, right? Like I mentioned, it would also transfer all your photos and everything in here. So you can see your photos. They're all in the satellite database. As long as you copy the whole folder, which will look something like this. Okay, so there's a folder. It's exactly like the folder that you get into a normal database. Okay, so you can copy the whole folder and then you can work on this. So you'll have your certificates and everything here. All right. So like I said, you can have several users working the same satellite database at the same time, so that's not a problem. You can be modifying existing survey. You can also create new survey. Just as a short note here, if you have several, because you can create several satellite databases at the same time, right? And you can have different users logging different drill holes at the same time. And as I mentioned, you can create new drill holes or a new survey as you go. So if I'm creating let's say webinar 01 here, and someone else in a different satellite database is creating the same drill hole with the same name, only the first one that is synced with the master database will be synced. The other one, when at the moment of syncing, it will say this drill hole already exists, so we're not going to transfer it to the master database. You're not going to be losing your data, but you will have to go back to the satellite database and give it a different name to be able to sync it. Okay, so just a short note, like it's not the end of the world, but just know that in GeoTSync you cannot have two drill holes with the same name, so that causes conflict. So that's why you would get an error. And then once you're done doing all your modification, your new drill holes, and all your description, you will want to sync it back to the master database. So there's different ways of doing this. You can sync it back from the satellite database into the master database. You can also be already in the master database and sync the satellite database from there. So there's absolutely different ways of doing this, and there's no good way, so you can do it either way. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So if I'm here, and again, there's different places in Gentic to do this. You can do it directly from here, Synchro Master, or again, you can go in here into Synchro Master to be able to synchronize it back to the master database. Okay, so if I'm doing this, I'm just going to select a few Dremel in here, and I'm going to do Synchro Master. It's going to ask me what is the master database I want to use, and it has to be the same one that was used to create the satellite database. You say OK. And because I went from the project tab, it's only the one that were selected that will be transferred or synced. Otherwise, you can always go to the utilities and then you can select each of them individually. Okay. I just want to point out here, earlier we had read modification, but we didn't get this third column here called delete. And what it does here is it asks you, what do you want to do with those Dremel after this synchronization? Do you want to keep it into your satellite database as a read-only? Do you want to keep them in modification mode afterwards in the satellite database? Or do you want to delete them from the satellite database because you're done with those Dremels? Okay, so it asks you what you want to do with those Dremels after the synchronization. Okay, so if we do webinar 1, okay, I'm going to do delete here. And by the way, like I mentioned before, if you synchronize every single survey that you have in your satellite database and you delete all of them, automatically the satellite database is also going to be deleted because there's no use to it because there's nothing in it. Okay. So let's say synchronize. Okay, so we'll synchronize these, and then they will disappear from the satellite database, and they will be available again into the master database. Okay. So do this. See, they're all gone now. And if I was going to go into the master database just to show you how it looks like, they will all already be available in modification mode in the satellite database, in the master database. Sorry. Okay. See, I'm now in the master database, and my webinar 1 that I created has been transferred, and probably the one that I modified in here, like probably for sure, it has been. It took my different Dremel, sorry. It was in rich work on there. The first one here. Okay. I guess I forgot to press the save button when I did this change, but it would sync. It would sync it automatically. Okay. So that's how you sync it back. Like I mentioned, if I was going to sync from here, I can sync the rest of my data. So I would do sync master, select my satellite database, and then I can select everything in here and just say, okay, I just want to delete everything. And if I do this, it will synchronize everything back to the master database. And because these are the last survey of my satellite database, it will also delete the satellite database afterwards. Okay, so if I was going to go back and if I was going to go back in here, you would not find my satellite database anymore because it has been deleted automatically. Okay. Just a few more things. So that covers pretty much how to build, like how to use those satellite databases. There's just one more thing here called the logs management. Again, this feature is only available for super administrator. Otherwise, you don't have access to this. And this is not dangerous, but you have to use it with great caution, because this is to remove the locks. So if a drill hole was in a satellite database, and then you remove the lock, basically you're destroying the link between the satellite database and the master database. So the surveys that were in modification mode in the satellite database, all the data that were in there are going to be lost, and it will recover how it was before the last synchronization. Okay, so you will lose everything that was in the satellite database, all the modification that you've done in the satellite database, and it will come back to what it is. It could be useful sometimes if you, I don't know, for some reason your satellite database gets corrupted, or by mistake you delete your satellite database. Those drill holes are going to be locked in the master database, but at some point you want them to be accessible and be in modification mode. So you may want to delete those locks if it happens. Okay? So what you would see here is the project survey, like every survey, basically, all your drill holes, your channels, and everything that are in a satellite database are going to be listed in here, and then you can select the one that you want, for which you want to delete the locks. Okay, so this is how it works. So this is why it's only available for super administrator, because you don't want people to be playing with locks all the time, because it could be dangerous to lose data. Okay, so this is like the last thing you want to do is use the lock manager, but it's available so that you're not losing everything if a problem happens. Okay, so I think that covers pretty much everything about the satellite databases. If you have more questions or more, feel free to ask. I'm going to be available to answer every question now, or as usual, you can always email me or just give me a ring. I'll be glad to help you out in there. But really, satellite databases are very frequently used by our customers, and they're really, really useful. So I encourage you to use them as well. I gave you like the different little traps there. So basically, the most important things is you do not want to keep copies of your database, satellite database everywhere. So just keep one copy at a time, so you don't mess up and you don't end up having different data into different databases. So you want to keep the integrity of your data. It's quite important. Okay, so, but other than that, it's fairly user-friendly. It's just synchronizing your data, and then you can just work independently, remotely. And there's absolutely no problem doing this. So that's pretty much it for me today. If you have any questions, please feel free. And like I said, yeah, you can always email me or give me a ring if you ran into this problem, into a problem or anything. So thank you very much, and I'll be here to answer your questions.